Welcome to Pario Magazine, where I chat with individuals who have a desire to create. Today, I'm joined by the designer and maker of a vital element of professional wrestling, championship title belts. Welcome to Pario Magazine, Darren Hall from Championship Gold.
Hey, how are you?
Good, thank you. Good to have you here today.
Thanks for having me on.
So we're here today to chat about your journey through the world of pro wrestling and in particular belt making. Before we dive into that though, do you want to give our audience a brief intro as to who Darren is away from wrestling?
So I'm 57 years old, and I grew up as a child in the 70s that adored World Championship Wrestling that used to be on the TV from the Americans that came out to Australia for quite a few years. Used to watch that religiously with my father and my brother on a Saturday afternoon. And that sort of stuck into my mind as I grew older and got a feeling for wrestling, and then had an admiration for wrestling belts. So back in I actually got my first wrestling belt would have been probably in the mid-90s, and I bought that off a gentleman out of the US that was at that time making belts for the WWE, Joe Marshall. And so I have a website and had a look at all the different designs on there that I wanted. And I had a keen eye for, at that time, the Intercontinental belt from the WWE that Shawn Michaels had was wearing, and that. So I got one of those custom made for myself. And unfortunately, I had heard a lot of things about J-Mar with his timelines, and didn't realise that. I thought they were over exaggerating with, 2, 3, even 4 years wait. And I thought, that can't be right. So I ordered it from him, and yeah, they were right. It took me about 2.5 years.
Wow, that's a long time.
Long time. And when I got it, it was good. And actually, it's still in Australia at the moment. It's actually the heavyweight title in the AWF in New South Wales. That particular belt that I got. So Greg Bounds has got that in for the AWF. So then I decided, while I was waiting for the J-Mar belt to arrive, there was also another belt maker in the US. And at that time, there was only about 2 belt makers in the early 90s that were doing it. Was the J-Mar, and then it was Dave Milliken and Reggie Parks. So I bought a couple of belts while I was waiting for the J-Mar one. I bought a couple of belts from Reggie Parks, customised ones, and yeah, I didn't have to wait 2.5 years. I think I got those within 2 months. And at that time, the Australian dollar was like about 62 cents, pretty much to what it is at the moment. And they ended up costing me almost $6,000 just for 2 belts. And that's where the sort of the light bulb went off in my mind, and thought, small promotions around the country or around the world just wouldn't be able to afford, $6,000 for a couple of belts, especially when some promotions have more than just 2 belts. They have tags, heavyweight, cruiserweight, women's belts. And that put the light bulb off in my brain and said, well, maybe there might be a better option for those that can't afford these top-end belts, that there could be a cheaper alternative, so they could afford something and still have that prestige of having championship belts in their arsenal. So it took me about 1 year of deciding how I was going to do it, what sort of material I was going to use. Never picked up a leather tool or knew how to do anything with leather. I just had to look at magazines and videos and just sort of pick it up myself, and then go to the local leather craft shop and take photos in and say, how did they do this? How did they do that? And they gave me the tools and everything that I could use to be able to do that. And then my first couple of belts, I went to a place that was doing centrifugal casting, which is spin casting with zinc alloy. They'd make a mold of the design, and then they would spin cast it with zinc, and then gold plated or nickel plated, whatever I wanted, and then paint it. So you would pay for the mold, and then you could make as many belts from that particular mold as however long the mold would last. And the molds were expensive to begin with, but then every time you got spin casted zinc, each plate out of those molds, it became obviously cheaper because you were only just then paying for the zinc casting. So I did that for the first few belts and then the only drawback to that was if this customer wanted a different design, then you had to make up a different mold, and then that would just add costs to the price. And at that time, I wanted to keep the costs down because I wanted to be an alternative cost-saving alternative for those promotions and for those wrestling fans that just wanted something a little bit cheaper and didn't want to pay a lot of money. So then I had to think of another way that I could do these belts with keeping the costs down. So I then had a look into acid etching, which was something that they did back in the days, and I decided that I would do acid etching in brass. Brass being a cheaper alternative metal to zinc. Unfortunately, here in Australia, we can't get zinc. We have to buy it from overseas, and that once again was something that I didn't really want to do because that was going to increase prices, whereas I could get brass locally. At the time I was living in Tasmania, so I could get brass from Victoria or from New South Wales and get it sent down, and it was rather cheap. So I started off by using the brass. Trouble with brass is that it's quite a dense metal, and when you're acid etching, you can't really get a deep bite from the acid because of its hardness. And so that meaning is that the longer it went into the acid, the deeper it went, yes, but then it also created that it went sideways as well, so you wouldn't get sharp definition of your lines. So you could only acid etch it for a short amount of time before it would start to blur out and not look accurate enough. So it was quite a shallow etch, which made painting difficult to get it in between the lines and that. So I did the brass etching for quite some time. Probably for about two and a half years. So I've been in the industry for 20 plus years now. And I did that for the first, after I did the centrifugal zinc casting, I then went into brass etching. I did that for about two and a half, maybe even 3 years at the beginning. And that was successful enough. I was able to get a product out there that was not top end like the ones that I'd bought from Reggie Parks and J Mar, but it was an alternative to be able to get something out there for those that just couldn't afford the top end stuff. So I was quite successful at the beginning. I went into partnership with a guy from America named Randy Jackson, who owns Top Rope Belts now. Him and I went into partnership together, whereas he would go out and get the orders from, mostly at the time from America, but from other areas of the world as well. And then I would make the belts, send them to him, and then he would send them off to the customer. So we did that for a while, and then Randy decided that he wanted to go out on his own and try and compete with Dave Milliken and J Mar and that with the top end stuff. And I continued on with the mid-range, the lower to mid-range belts that I offered for those for clients that didn't want to pay as much. And and congratulations to Randy Jackson, who went on to become quite successful in the top end range of wrestling belts, and still going today. So then moving forward after that, I got out of doing the brass stuff at that time and went into the zinc, and took the gamble of going into zinc etching, having to buy the zinc from overseas. I had to add a little bit more cost to the belts, but at the time then I was working full time as well, and this was just a hobby on the side. So it didn't really matter that I didn't make a big profit. So I was able to still keep the prices down low, so as it was more competitive for those customers that wanted the lower end stuff. And got into the zinc for probably the next 15 years, doing zinc etching, getting the deeper etching and colour fill, getting them gold plated or nickel plated here in Australia. And I don't do the gold or nickel plating. I get somebody else to do that who's more experienced than I am in that sort of stuff. And then I got the current artist that I currently use now. His name's Billy, from out of Virginia in the USA. He's my current artist and designer, who does all the designs for the wrestling belts and whatever belts that come our way. It's not at this stage, well, at the moment, it's not only wrestling belts that we do or boxing belts that we do. It's anything. It can be golf, it can be racing, car racing, it can be baseball, it can be dance clubs, calisthenics I've done, stock car racing, you name it, pretty much we've done it. And it's branching out now that it's just not a trophy for just one particular sport. It's now becoming that where you used to get trophies made, it's now a lot of people are turning to championship belts to be able to have something a little bit different and more prestigious. So Billy, I've probably been with Billy now for about 10 years, and he does some wonderful designs. And it would have been probably about 7-8 years ago that I decided that I would move away from the zinc etching and move into CNC engraving. Once again, I can then use brass, which I can acquire locally, and I don't have to buy from overseas, keep the costs down, and I can engrave nice and deeply in brass. So I bought myself 2 engraving machines about 8 years ago. They're Roland engraving machines, and then I bought the Rolands. I bought some software that I can use to be able to create the designs, and the same software that I'm using today. And then got into the CNC. So I got into CNC engraving probably before anybody else did. So there's a few out there at the moment that do CNC engraving. I know that Jay Ma, who we talked about earlier, did some engravings. I'm not sure if he does the engravings himself or he has somebody else to do them for him. And there's some guys out of Pakistan who are now doing CNC engravings with some excellent results. So I was probably the first to do CNC engravings. And the benefit of that is that to have the 2 engraving machines that I have, I can get a design, or I can get orders that come in. I can get an order in on a Monday morning at 5-6 o'clock in the morning. My artist will have the artwork back to me in a couple of days, and then I can start it in 2 days' time. Once I've got the art approved, I can have a set of plates done by that afternoon, and the next day sent off to gold plating. So the benefit of doing CNC engravings now is it cuts the time down. Instead of, in doing it in the past where it could take 2 or 3 weeks of doing it all, of getting the design, doing all the rigmarole that you've got to do with zinc etching or brass etching, cutting the plates out, curving the plates, welding the screws onto the back. could, anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks. This can take anywhere from 1 to 2 days now, and I can have it sent to the platers and back from the platers within 5 days, and on leather, and sent out to the customer within 7 to 10 days. So
Wow.
that's the benefit of doing CNC engravings. Turnaround time, and a lot of customers, not all, but a lot of customers want urgent belts, which I couldn't do in the past. Whereas now, if they say, look, I need it in 2 weeks, more than likely I can do it in 2 weeks. So that's the benefit of doing CNC engravings. Be able to get it out, and you get a good product from the engraving. And yeah, turnaround time is less, and then that makes customers happy, and then they come back, and that's probably basically where I am at the moment. Still doing CNC every now and again. I still do zinc engravings because not every design can be CNC engraved. The CNC software that I use is only for a V-bits, which is a tool that's in the shape of a V on the ends, and not every design that you do, that you create, can be done on the CNC engraver. So I also still do some zinc engravings, but zinc etchings, but majority of the time it's brass engravings, and then also I can order zinc from overseas and do zinc engravings as well on the CNC machine. So yeah, so basically that's where we're at. We've done belts in the past for the Young Rock program. That's about the Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. We did the belts for Series 1 and 2 of those. We didn't do the belts for Series 3. I believe that they went to Pakistan for those belts, but we did do it for the first 2 seasons. We've just done a couple of belts for a movie that's been done here in Australia, in Adelaide. So that's coming out sometime, I believe, this year. We've done belts in the past for the WBC, which is the World Boxing Council. Not belts that they've used in ring, but these are belts that they sell for collectors. We've done belts for the Major League Baseball, which has been on Major League Television in the US. We've done belts for the Minor League Baseball in the US. So we've got in the 20 years that we've been going, we've got a bit of a collection of top-end clients that we've done stuff for, and we've done a lot of belts for a lot of Australian companies. I've made the first belt that went in Adelaide, the one that I've gone blank. The one that the current WWE Women's Champion is I can't think of it.
Riot City Wrestling, Rhea Ripley.
Right, yes, Rhea Ripley. Yes, so I made Riot City Wrestling. I made that belt that she won when she was working with Riot City Wrestling. I didn't obviously I didn't know her at that time when she was at Riot City Wrestling, but obviously know that it's now, and have seen photos of her with the belt that we've created. So yeah, we've done PCW here in Melbourne. We've done belts for, and so a lot of the promotions that are here in Australia, we've pretty much done their belts for them. New Zealand as well. At the moment, we're doing some belts for a boxing company in New Zealand. They've done about 5 or 6 belts with us at the moment, and continue to do belts with us. So I still work full time. So this is still just a sideline for me. So I just do it on my 2 days off. But as we was talking about earlier, within those 2 days, if I'm doing CNC engravings, I can have, with the 2 machines, I can have 2 belts done within those 2 days, and then sent out to plating. And then my next 2 days off, I can finish those off, and they've gone to the customer. So
Very nice.
That's the good thing about that. So yeah, that's pretty much where we're at. Been successful, and as I said, I'm 57, almost 58 years old. I've got a couple of years to go before retirement. So um, got two and a bit years before, we'll probably wrap it all up after that. Having said that, I'll probably get bored when I get retirement, so I'll probably continue to do the belts. But at this stage, I've probably got another couple of years in me, and then probably try and look at retiring.
Be a nice sort of little hobby to keep going in retirement at some point, I guess, as well.
Yeah, well, that's right. That's right. If the work's there and, I've got the gear still here, then I won't say no, but I'll be sort of settling into that retirement mode. So, but yeah, I've got the option still there to do them if something comes my way, and continue to do them. So.
And how special is it now to sort of see so many Australian promotions around that? Obviously, they're all going to need belts at some point. So you've done, like you mentioned, PCW, Riot City Wrestling, the Melbourne City Wrestling belts as well. Looking on your website,
yes.
One of the PWA belts, and the recent ones, the World Series and Oceania Pro Wrestling as well. Like, is it cool to see sort of those promotions growing?
Yes. So World Series Wrestling have been a long-standing customer of mine. I made their very first belt back when World Series Wrestling came out, back in probably 2000s, I think, was back then. Made their first belt, and continuing to still do belts for them. Oceania, I just recently done belts for them this year. Done some belts for a couple of companies over in West Australia. Done belts for Canberra. Done belts for quite a few of those ones up in Queensland. So majority of the wrestling companies around the country I've done. Mixed martial arts down in Tasmania, I've done, which is the Legion ones. I've done those for them. I've also done stuff for the TWA down in Tassie, Tasmanian Wrestling Association. So yeah, basically, and it's always good to, when I happen to be flicking through Facebook or one of the other social medias, to see that belts on the champions. It's always good, and a good feeling to think back. I remember when I made those belts, and it's always a good feeling to actually see them on the wrestlers.
And then to see some of those wrestlers go on to bigger and better things as well is always a nice little touch.
Absolutely. So going back in 2017, 2016, we did the WWE fan belts, which they distributed out when WWE came to Australia in 2016, 2017, when they ran a promotion for who was their greatest fan, where they had to put in 2-minute videos to explain why they would be considered WWE's greatest fan, and then they picked out a winner out of each state that the WWE came to, and had one of their wrestlers who was on the card present the belts to the winners at each of those events. So that was a privilege, and then I had the privilege of sending one of those WWE greatest fans belts to the WWE in America. And I'm not sure whether it was Triple H or Vince McMahon. One of those two has one of those belts hanging in their office. So that's a bit of a privilege too.
And then, so for people that might need or might want to get a custom belt made, do you sort of have tips? Like, should they come to you with ideas or a rough sketch, or are they better off to come in fresh and just sort of have a discussion with you?
They could do it either way. A lot of people just do a handwritten, hand detailed sort of picture of what they sort of want, and or they'll just send me text and say, I want this, and this in this, and then I will just send that off to Billy, who then does his magic and sends it back pretty much to how he interprets what the customer is needing. And then I send that off to the customer, and then the customer will sort of come back and say, "Well, could I change this?" Or, "Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking." So, yeah, either way, they can send the design in that they've just hand drawn, and we can sort of establish what they're thinking and what they need, or they can just sort of verbally, sort of in an email, describe what they're wanting, and yeah, and then Billy sort of got the experience that he sort of understands what most customers' needs are and what they're thinking, and he's able to put it to paper and send them off. And 9 times out of 10, the customer's normally happy with the first draft that they get. And then, if they're not happy with one particular thing, then obviously we'll change it until they are happy and we're ready to proceed.
Okay. And you mentioned earlier about not having any leather working experience. Did you have any sort of metalworking or fabrication experience before beginning this whole journey?
Never had any. The only metalworking I did was grade 7 at high school, and I wasn't any good at that. But yeah, no, I just sort of had to, like self-taught, sort of had to learn it myself. I mean, I didn't even know when I first started how I was going to secure the plates to the leather. So I didn't understand or realize that, you had to solder on certain studs on the back of the plates so that you could then drill a hole through the leather, put these bolts through the leather, and then screw them on from the other side of the leather to be able to uh, to put it onto the leather. So when we first started, I just drilled straight through the plate, straight through the leather, and had screws on the outside of the plate, face on the front face of the plate, and then that went through the back of the leather. And it didn't look professional to have screws on the front face of the plates. So I had to sort of think of how I was going to do that, and then I went to a welding place, and they said, "Oh no, you wouldn't be able to weld any bolts on the back of zinc because welding is too hot and it would just melt the plate." So then they said the best way to do it would be with solder. So I got some solder, and then I bought one of those butane torches that you would use. And I used, and then I bought some solder flux, and got hold of some screws that they're called Chicago screws. They're a 2-piece screw that's got a flat edge on one end. So I was able to then sort of work out that I could get some solder, put some flux down, get the screw, get the heat from the butane torch, melt the solder, put the screw on, and then when it cooled down, it was secure enough to be able to hold the plate. And then I was able to put it through on the back of the plates onto the leather, so I was able to hide the screws from sight and have the plate secured on there. But that took me quite a while to work out how to do that. And then with the leather work, when I first started with the leather work, it was just very, very basic. There was just cut the leather out. There was just doing tooling around the edges, and that was it. There was nothing with snap boxes or anything that I do now. It was just very, very basic because I just really didn't know how to do it. I mean, I had to buy leather that was already black because I didn't know how to dye it. I did try to use leather dye, and I didn't like the finish that I got from it. So I just continued to stay with just black leather and tool the black leather. But to get good quality leather that's already been pre-dyed was quite expensive. Double butts, for a side of a double butt now, you could get $600, and you could probably get maybe 3 to 4 belts out of $600 hide. So that was quite expensive to do it that way. But that was the only way back then that I could do something without, because I didn't really know. So, but it wasn't. It took time, and talk to a lot of people and talk to the leather people to work out the best way that I could achieve the best possible result that I could get. And to this day, my leather work is still not top range, but I haven't got time to sit there and tool a piece of leather for 2 or 3 hours like the big guys do and get prestige looking leather. Money, and I've got 10 hours, because if I have, I've got to add those 3 hours of costs to the cost of the belt, and that just increases the prices of the belts, and that's where I don't want them. Yes, my prices have increased over the years from when I first started 20 years ago to where we are now, but then cost of living, cost of price of everything has gone sky high. Yep. Cost of gold at this stage is way higher than it's ever been in the last 20 years. So those customers getting that want gold belts now, are paying a top dollar to get the gold plating done because of the prices. And leather as well at the moment is nowhere near what it used to be, because it's all just increased up in prices. So yep, you just got to go with the flow, and when prices do go up, of course your prices go up, but that goes up for every belt maker. So it doesn't matter who it is, their prices are always going to go up because costs always go up. So yeah, my prices are more expensive than they was 20 years ago, but then so is Dave Milliken's belts are more expensive than they was 20 years ago. So you've got to put that in retrospect as well. But I'm still quite competitive and at the bottom to middle end range of price wise compared to the big guys. And when I say the big guys, I'm talking Dave Milliken and Randy Jackson from Top Rope Belts. So I consider those to be the top two in the belt making world. And I don't want to compete with those guys. I can't compete with them because they're the top end. So yep. I want to be the mid range belt maker who's been quite successful doing that. And then, if a customer wants that top end stuff because it's a prestige title that they want to do, then obviously they've got the options of Dave Milliken and Randy Jackson. And then if they want to pay, if they don't want to pay the top dollar, then they've got the options of me and many others around now that have come through. When I first started 20 years ago, as I told you before, there was only J Mar and Dave Milliken, Reggie Parks. But now there's, ones that have been around for quite a while. There's probably maybe a dozen around the world now. And then you've got the guys out of Pakistan, which when they first started were very, very poor quality stuff. But they've improved. They've way improved now, but also their costs have improved. Their costs have increased. So they're not that cheap option that they used to be. You are paying for the quality that you get now, and some of the quality from some of the Pakistan guys is quite good. Over the 20 years, I've had to repair a lot of the Pakistan belts because of plating issues, leather issues, and their plating wasn't very good. Their leather wasn't very good at the time. But from what I've seen now and for what's come past, my way where people wanted something to be repaired, their quality is quite good and their CNC work is very, very good. So there's always alternatives out there than the two big guys. And I'm not trying to be here and promote other people's work, but you've got options. You don't always have to settle with the one thing. There's other options out there, but I normally have repeat customers, so I know that my work is acceptable in the market industry. People come back, so that's probably the good thing about where I'm at the moment is that customers come back. Yep. If I wasn't producing a product that was acceptable in the market, then they would just go somewhere else. So it's good to know that my work is out there. It's accepted, and people return more than once to get repeat orders. So that's the good thing about that.
Yeah, it's a good example of your passion sort of coming through, like if you started with no base, but you've been able to take that passion and learn everything you need to know about making the belts, that you can still do it 20 years later.
Correct, yes. And, and I look back now at some of the stuff that when I first started, when I looked, and I thought when I first started 20 years ago, I thought, oh, that belt, that looks really, really good. And then I look back on old photos from where I was to where I am now, and I think, oh, that was rubbish.
Do you have a favorite belt?
I do. Off the top of my head, there's not, I wouldn't say a favorite belt. That are you talking about a favorite belt that I've made, or a favorite belt in general?
A favorite that you've made. It's like picking one of your kids, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. I probably don't have a favorite. There are quite a few designs that I do like that we've done. And when I say designs, it's a general layout of the design, which we've made many different belts out of with different features. But there's I'm doing one at the moment, which is a belt for a marriage proposal belt, or not a marriage proposal belt, but a belt that they're going to use at the marriage ceremony, which is a design that is probably one of my favourites that we've used many a times for different other ones. And I have to have a look on the website to be able to show you which one it was.
If you just want to send me that photo later, we can put that alongside the article.
Yeah, I should have the marriage belt completed within the next week, so I can send you a photo of that. So you can have a look at the design of that one. But it's only a 3-plate. It's in gold, but it's quite an impressive three-plate design that we've done. But I think we've done a lot of really good designs that look good, whether or not they're on one particular promotion or we change it to another different promotion. It's just the shape of the plates themselves that I think is nice. And then, like I said to you before, some things CNC engrave better than others. So I always like to get Billy, if we're going to CNC engrave something, I always like Billy to use a lot of filler. So when I say filler, it's to fill in a lot of the big gaps that are in, especially the centre plate. CNC engraving machines don't like a lot of open areas that it's got to engrave, because it does, even though it can engrave them, it does leave the tool marks in that engraved area that do take a fair bit of polishing to be able to polish them out. So I sort of get Billy to put a lot of filler work into stuff so as we can minimise the amount of area that we have to engrave out. So once again, we can then lower the time it's going to take for the CNC machine to engrave the plates out, and thus save time and get it off to the customer a lot quicker. So
unfortunately, we encountered a little technical issue there as we closed out our interview with Darren Hall from Championship Gold here in Australia. Thank you everyone for watching the interview. If you want to check out Darren's work or get a championship wrestling belt for your own wrestling promotion, or just like a little project for like a back shelf like mine, head over to www.championshipgold.com.au. And once again, thank you everyone for watching.